I think this is probably the biggest, or one of the biggest, if not the biggest takeaways, storylines from the weekend, the Mets Brewers beef. I'll go ahead and say right now that I did not have this, dare we call it, rivalry starting, brewing, pun intended. Look, the Mets, if you followed this podcast for any length of time, or just Nate and I in general for any length of time, you know how we feel about the Mets, and even really the Brewers. So honestly, when this happened, I was a little torn. I didn't really know which team to side with because I'm not the biggest Brewers guy. Haven't been for a while. Certainly not a big Mets guy. I tweeted out this weekend that the Mets, following the fiasco, actually following the intentional pitch behind, which I'll touch on, I just tweeted out, simply put, that the Mets are the most pathetic franchise in baseball. And I believe that before the season even started. And then all of this went down. Talk about doubling down on that take. The Mets are the most pathetic franchise in baseball. And I'll stand by. That's a hill that I will die on without a problem, without an issue. So if you live under a rock, I'll give you a little bit of a rundown as to what happened. So there was a play up the middle where Rhys Hoskins is coming in as the base runner. Jeff McNeil prepared to receive, make the transition, make the throw, turn two, receives the throw, goes to make the throw. Rhys Hoskins comes in with a late slide. Look, there's been a lot of takes flying around, and mine is just going to be another one that's in that mix of takes flying around. What weight do my takes hold? But hopefully you're here listening, so I appreciate you if you are interested and take value in the takes that we share on here. But with that said, I'll just say that, look, I'm only 30 years old. I'm not going to sit here and drop the whole back in my day thing. But it wasn't even that long ago to where this was a very normal, widely accepted slide. You are taught and this isn't like, there's probably people listening go, well, what would you know? Did you play professional baseball? No, I didn't. I'll be the first to tell you, I played Division III college baseball. I was proud of it, but who am I to say one way or the other? All I'm telling you, from my experience, from what I know, and from following the game for as long as I have, guys are taught to slide late. Why, you ask? To break up the throw, which is exactly what happened here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you or convince you out of believing that maybe a new reinforcement of base running rules or sliding rules. I don't know where Major League Baseball stands on that at this particular point in time. I know we've had some issues. Dustin Pedroia, Chase Utley involved in separate incidents over years past. But looking at the video from this play, I just have a hard time getting upset with Rhys about this. And I know immediately when it happened, you've got Jeff McNeil just in his face, letting him know. And look, I talk all the time about, like, if you're going to talk about it, be about it. It wasn't the best look, if we're being honest, for Rhys Hoskins to get up, immediately make his way over to the dugout. He begins to be held back once he starts getting fired up a little bit. And then from behind the railing, if I recall correctly, it was behind the railing of the top step of the dugout is when he starts the whole crying gesture to Jeff McNeil. I get it. Jeff McNeil seemed to be a little hot about this. And I understand guys' careers have been ruined over stuff like this. So I understand where the frustration comes from, the heat of the moment. But just a weird situation where he comes in late. Again, I thought it was it wasn't the cleanest slide, but to me, it was a hard play. It was a hard attempt to break up a play up the middle. Jeff McNeil took exception to that, and apparently so did Yohan Ramirez, who later was it today? Was it later in the game? Again, drinking from a fire hose this opening weekend. There's a lot that gets lost in the mix. Either way, after the fact, Yohan Ramirez throws behind Rhys Hoskins, which was such a loser move to sit. And I know they all come out and say, well, there was no intention behind it. And then you got the manager coming out and saying, no, I'm backing my guy. There was no intent behind it. It was clear as day. You're going to throw at it. It wasn't really at his head. It was more behind the neck, behind the numbers, behind the nameplate, that general vicinity. But very, very clearly intentional. Did it happen to anybody else in the lineup in that specific way? No. Rhys Hoskins has a reason to be upset. If he thinks his slide was a clean slide, a hard play, an aggressive play, he has every reason to be upset. And look, guy, I think Carabas tweeted it. He said, Rhys Hoskins has played his entire career in Philly. Your boos do nothing but fuel him. And sure enough, guy goes off. He's got a 2-run single, a 2-run bomb. He had an answer for this whole incident. And quite frankly, the Mets come out of this situation looking like absolute losers. You get swept. I don't know if the decision has been made yet. I don't know if that has to wait till Monday on the suspension. I don't know if we've heard back on that. But chances are that that'll probably remain. It maybe it'll probably get dropped a game, if anything. But just a rough look for the Mets to start the season. Not to mention you got the dance team coming out. They're on top of the dugout. Mets are getting the freaking break speed off them. They're out there doing Gangnam Style and just breaking it down for a couple of Mets breakdowns, if you will. And then you got Pete Alonso, which look, I don't have a problem with Pete Alonso showing up to a country concert and getting up on stage and having a grand old time. I've said before, we treat these guys as if they're not human beings. Like, these guys are entitled to a life outside of the lines, off the diamond. So look, I don't have a problem with Pete Alonso going to a country concert. I just think context matters. And if you've got Pete Alonso going to a country concert in the midst of a sweep to start the season, not the greatest look, in my opinion. So all that to say, I just think it was such a loser weekend. I'll just leave it at that. A loser weekend for the Mets. And again, not a big Brewers guy. I'm not going to necessarily come out as this big Rhys Hoskins homer, but if we're talking about maybe picking a side for this little incident, I'm probably going to side with Rhys Hoskins because, again, while it was a hard slide, I think it was a clean slide. You're taught, again, to slide late, to break up the throw, and that's what he did. So I'll leave it at that.